if we imagine the goal, the haughty goal of creating an autonomous AI researcher capable of carrying out the high and low-level tasks involved in research, what would we need to do differently from what we have today? How would the systems need to differ from the ones we have today? What components would we need, and how would we build such a system?
In a narrow sense, what we technically need to do, I think, is a system that is able to edit and extend its embedding space so it can build new representations over the world. Second is to be able to test them both empirically and from first principles. And third, it needs to be an author, which means it learns from what it finds out and changes as a result. So it's constantly expanding its horizon and understands things. But this is based on an extremely idealist notion of what a scientist is. I mean, when I was a grad student, I told my professor what I wanted to do for my PhD. And I said, basically, I want to take something like Minsky's Society of Mind and get it closer to something that I can actually implement. And my professor told me this is not what a scientist does. This is not possible in science. In science, you need to find a project that you can sell to a grant agency that gives results in 3 years from now. And when you do something where you, as you say, are fine when you don't succeed in your life because it's too hard, this is not science today. Science today is quite different. What a scientist is doing is successfully publishing impactful papers. It's the working definition of a scientist in today's world. It's the idea that scientist is a lifestyle archetype is completely confused. That's not what it's for. A scientist is a very specific and not very satisfying job, except for very, very few people. And so also in the process of generating knowledge, the scientist has a very specific and very narrow role. It's this thing where you are assigning control groups, where you're going through lots and lots of Excel tables and do very boring experiments, very systematically engage in very detailed discourses. And there is more that you need to do when you want to understand, right? Before you can do science, you need to do engineering. You need to get something to work at all, right? So science, in some sense, is a much more systematized version of engineering, where you are getting the last crumbs out of the system, where you understand the entire space, whereas the engineer just tries to get it to work. And before you can engineer, you need to design. And the designer is somebody who gets this thing to work for just one person, from one single perspective. And before you can do design, you need an artist, somebody who can see at first what the problem is, who can observe the reality deeply and capture what they observe. And so this entire process from observation to the systematization is what we want to do. And it's something that in our institutions we normally don't do very much anymore, because we are all extreme specialists, and the observers and the modelers are in different schools and rarely talk to each other. And so to me, this project of building an artificial scientist is very exciting, because it would require us to not just to build a system that is able to write papers, which I think is going to be over soon. Right? What do you think is going to happen when somebody has the idea to use ChatGPT to read through the paper repositories, write out all the references and what the references are supposed to say, and then reads the source papers and compares whether it's the case and builds the entire tree? Right? This is going to be an earthquake. It's going to be much bigger than the replication crisis in psychology. And it's going to change the notion that we have of papers as the artifact of science, as the main way in which we measure our progress and success as scientists. Right? So when we are building artificial scientists, the artifact is going to be different. It's probably not being the paper. It's going to be some building block in a larger amount of understanding that you can interrogate using AI, and then use in very different contexts. So this would be very exciting, basically to transcend what science is today and turn it into something that is much, much more useful than what we can currently do.
So